fly away with me. Come and fly away with me.
Hello? Hello?
Hello?
Hello, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you now, yeah.
Perfect.
Is that better?
Yeah, that's perfect. Well, firstly, thank you so much for letting me chat to you today. I've been so excited. I've been watching so much footage. I feel like I've already spoken to you already. But there is one thing I wanted to show you. So, for Christmas, I got this.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one, yeah.
So I'm going to be putting that in a frame, which I can't wait. But actually, it was my uncle's father who arranged to have the painting done for the charity.
Yeah.
Which is a little fun fact.
Good. Yeah,
Howard
great
Thomas.
job they did, yeah.
Yeah.
I love
So I'm really excited to put that up on the wall. I've just got to get a nice frame for it into it. So I'm sure everyone knows who you are. But just in case there is someone, watching that, doesn't know all the history, you are the BOB champion and you won the Grandnational on Aldaniti. Can you just tell me like a little brief, intro how you got into racing?
Well, I was brought up in Yorkshire. My father was a huntsman. And so basically, he stuck me on a pony when I was about 4 years old. And I must have been riding it for about 4.5 minutes. And he decided it was time I started jumping. And I can remember to this day, he pulled out a ladder, chased me over it. I fell off in a lot of nettles and I didn't think that was the game for me. Thankfully, Dad kept out of the way and I got on riding myself. But, basically, the real reason, I suppose, I wanted to be a jockey, being brought up in the northeast, Redcar was our local race course. It was only a mile away from where I live. And I went there with Dad. Dad used to go racing quite a bit. And Lester Piggott was riding. And, from that day, he was always my idol. And I thought, this Lester Piggott, I'm only a kid and he's not much, well, he's in his teens really, just started really. And when he was there, the crowds were always double. Lester Piggott, things have changed. Lester never used to say anything to anybody. But still, if you walk down the street and ask who Lester Piggott is, nowadays everybody would tell you. Now we've got Frankie Dettori, exactly the same. One's very outgoing and Lester's very shy type of thing. But I think Lester was the person that really got me interested, definitely.
So I read that you went to the North Riding of Yorkshire. Now, I thought that was like a racing place. Was that not? No,
really. The Northeast isn't... there's a few trainers up there, but not that many. But, I wanted to get into racing and... when I was about 14, the careers officer came around school and, telling us what jobs we'd be capable of. And what he came up with me was I could get a job down at Skinny Grove Mines, 15 miles under the North Sea that used to cave in most weeks and kill a few people and look after the pit ponies down there.
Oh my
Thankfully, my form master, Mr. Mackenzie, said to me, you've got to go with your dream in life. You want to be a jockey. That's what you've got to do. So left home virtually on my 15th birthday and moved south onto a farm and worked on the farm. Went to evening classes, did an engineering course, passed that with flying colours, never used them ever since. But started riding point-to-points those days and rode my first winner at 15. I think it was my second or third ride. And from that day, I always wanted to be a professional jockey. So that's how it started.
Wow. So after that, where did you go then? Who did you work for?
Well, after I left the farm, I moved to Toby Baldings. And, a friend of mine, Peter Calver, used to ride point-to-points. And he was very friendly with Toby and now started stealing his point-to-point rides, I think. So he thought he'd get rid of me. And so I went to Toby's and I always remember the first day there, July the 4th, actually. And they pulled out a horse off grass. It reared over on top of me and broke my leg. That was my first 5 minutes in a professional yard. So a lot of apprentices in the yard, and came out of hospital with a big plaster on my leg, got the blacksmith to make a big stirrup iron for me, and I rode out in plaster for a week.
Really?
Never realised the doctor rode out on Saturdays.
Oh.
And so that put paid to that. So
oh my goodness.
So I found other jobs around the yard, and gallopsman and things like that. So, and then it was the year of the foot and mouth, 68. And just got myself fit to ride. The country went down for 3 months with a foot and mouth, and so still no rides. And then my first ride came on a horse called Altercation. Its form figures were F, 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 F. It ran 7 times and fallen 7 times. Nobody in the yard wanted to ride it, not even me. And the governor said, "You're riding it, take it or leave it." So it went to Plumpton. It was 250 to 1 in a novice chase, and it'd fallen over hurdles as well. And it stood up and won.
Oh, there you go.
I thought God's gift to racing, I promise you. But did ride it twice after, and it fell twice, so it wasn't quite as good as I thought it was. Had a good season. Well, I rode 8 winners as an amateur in about 6 weeks, and I was absolutely flying. And the jockey club fell out with me, said I wasn't an amateur anymore, took my license away from me, so basically I virtually warned off. And took Toby 3 weeks before they would see me to get a professional license. And I can still remember coming up to Newmarket at the Craven meeting, when the stewards all moved up to Newmarket, and stood on the mat in front of them. They always used to say, talking about the mat. Well, I stood on the mat and, lied a bit to them and got away with it. And I got a license then. My first ride as a professional won. And the second ride, I should have won on the second ride. I don't think I gave it the best of rides. Finished second. Then I rode another winner. And then Toby said, "That's it for the season. You're not riding again." And because he wanted my claim as a conditional for the next season.
Yeah.
So I'm 4 months without a ride. Day before the beginning of the season, they pulled out another horse off grass. It reared over top of me and broke my other leg. So,
gosh.
And this was the worst. Pinned a bit, a few pins and everything. When I got back riding, I managed to have a good season. I rode 15 winners in a short time. And then I rode good horses, actually. I rode Highland Wedding, the race before he won the Grandnational. I rode him twice that season. And I rode him in the race after he won the Grandnational. They put Eddie Harty on him, a really top-class rider, and he won the National. But I was part of the team. That meant an awful lot to me. If I'd ridden him, I most likely got beat. I don't know. Nobody will ever know. Then after that, had another season. Had a dreadful season. Lost my claim too quickly, let's be honest. It was only 25 winners and you'd lost your claim those days. So, if you've got a £7 or £5 allowance, everybody wants you. When you're taking on the big boys with no allowance, it's hard, I promise you. Only rode 8 winners that season. And I thought, well, I've got to move on. And Eddie Harty was the man that really convinced me that to carry on. But he said, you've got to get out, go ride out an awful lot of different trainers and go freelance. And so I did that. And I used to love going flat racing, actually. Oh, still do. And I went to Bath one day, and I knew a man called Monty Stevens was going to start training. And I thought, well, I'll ask him if I could go and ride out. Because I wanted to get fit, because David Ellsworth had just started training, and he wanted me to ride a novice chaser called Lucky Tango. And it went 1-4 for me. So, novice chases, and I thought I'll go to Monty Stevens to ride out, local to me, and went along and rode out. Second day there, he offered me a retainer to ride his horses, and he just set up training, and he had a few jumpers, majority flat, and I can always remember about the third day there, I'm there, and I'm going to ride for him that afternoon at Devon and Exeter. And I can still remember in a horse called Wyndon. And I used to have breakfast. It was at Lucknam Park. You must know it's a big hotel complex now, a beautiful place. And as I was going into the house, just all that, I was talking to the lads and girls of the yard. What's the governor's interests? You've got to be able to talk to them about something, haven't you, over breakfast? And they all said, every one of them said, pigeon racing. Well, I knew nothing about pigeon racing, I promise you. I went in, and as I walked in the house, I saw these pigeons flying around, not wanting to go in the coop, and never thought any more about it. Sat at the table, nothing said much, and I came up with this cracker. I said, Governor, when I walked in, I saw all those pigeons flying around, not wanting to go in the coop. And to this day, I can still remember him looking at his watch and getting up from the table, went outside, came back in, picked up the 12 ball, went back out, bang, came back in, put the tag in from the pigeon's leg into the clock, and said, that should have about won. You better do the same this afternoon. So I went to Devon and Exeter and rode a winner for him, I promise you. But I did say to him the next morning, why did you get rid of that pigeon? He said, well, they're no damn good. If they don't come back into the coop, they don't win races, but most of all, they teach the others bad habits. So there was method in his madness, I promise you. But he was the man that got me going, I must admit. And rode for him for about 18 months, but sadly he died of cancer. So that was me out of a job again. So I went freelance, and I was doing really well. I was riding for Elsie and Patrick Haslam's first winners. And I was Jim Old's first winner, a great friend of mine, rode Jim's first winner as well. And I was flying and getting rides everywhere. I was offered the job at Josh Gifford's, and but also at the same time I was offered a job at Davey Nicholson's, and I didn't know which one to take. And the reason I was a little bit dubious at taking Josh's job was a friend of mine was stable jockey there before myself, Dougie Barrett. Sadly, he got killed in a race at Newcastle, and taking over dead man's shoes isn't the nicest thing to do. But somebody had to have the job. Thankfully, I took it, and I suppose the rest is history. Josh was an absolutely fantastic man to ride for, very firm, but, didn't give you many orders or hardly any orders at all, but all he wanted was 110% out of you, and that's what I tried to do.
Then, did you ever get to ride for David Nicholson at all?
Oh, yes, I rode quite a few winners for Davey Nicholson, so, I didn't miss out completely.
Oh, that's right then.
I just, I loved riding for the Duke. I rode some nice horses for him through the years. But, Josh was my retained yard then. And I was very lucky because Josh had got some really nice young horses in the yard, horses like Approaching and lots and lots of good horses, Kilbrony. Then Kaibo, virtually was champion hurdle class. He was only 3 lengths behind Monksfield all the time. I'm sure he would have won a Gold Cup, but sadly he got killed in a race at Newcastle when he shattered his hind leg at the water jump. That broke my heart, I must admit.
So how did the partnership between you and Aldaniti, how did that come together?
Aldaniti came together, basically quite a few years before he won the National, because, as I said, stable jockey. He was Josh and Mrs. Gifford Althea always bought a lot of young horses and, sold them on. And if we couldn't sell them on, we'd run them in Mrs. Gifford's name. And Aldaniti, they couldn't sell him, to be honest, at the stage. And so Josh ran him at Ascot, and he absolutely bolted up. And he could have sold him 150 times that night. And the Embricos rang him virtually straight after the race. So that's how the story started. And Aldaniti then basically finished second his next time at Ascot. The penalty beat him. And then he was fourth at Cheltenham in the Sun Alliance Novice Hurdle. He was he was a good horse, let's be honest. And then he went chasing, and I managed to fall off him at the second last at Newbury's first run over fences. He did make a mistake, mind you. And then he won. But he was a horse that always had so many problems, always leg problems, always something wrong or little breaks. And so he spent more time studying his box than he ever did on a race course. I think he only ran about 20 odd times in his whole career.
Oh, wow.
And I can always remember I suppose it was his first big race. One of his first big races, the Silver Fox at Leicester. And I got off him that day and said to the owners, he'll win a Grandnational one day. And I think they might have looked at me if I was mad or stupid, but it was over 2.5 miles. And that always kept them in their mind. And they realised I had been connected with horses before in my career that had won on the National. Like I said, I'd ridden Highland Wedding a winner. I won on Rag Trade, his very first run over fences. I looked after at Toby's a horse called Lucius as a 2-year, no, Rubstick, sorry, not Lucius, Rubstick at Toby's. I broke him in and everything, rode him away. And I promise you he was too slow to be a 2-year-old and ended up winning a National. Oh, wow. But all of them gave me the same sort of feel, Hello?
Hello? Sorry, it's just frozen. I'm sure it'll come back in a second.
Shall I move rooms and start again?
Yeah, would you mind? Sorry, it's just...
Yeah, we'll try that. Yeah. Okay.
I'll wait here. That seems better. So you were saying about Aldaniti's injury. He used to get injured quite a lot.
Well, he did, I suppose he tried too hard in a lot of ways. Is that picture all right, or is it all...
Yeah, lovely pictures in the background.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, he always seemed to be getting injured. And when I was in hospital, he broke down very badly. And the vets wanted to put him down. But the Embricos always remembered the day at Leicester when I said he'd win a Grandnational one day. So they got him back to their place, and he was put in plaster, and he was in plaster for over 6 months. Stood in a box, tied up for 6 months.
Really?
Couldn't walk around, and he must have been an absolutely marvellous patient. But, then they came out and they did all the road work with him. And then he went back to Josh's January the 1st, 1981. And Josh realised the only way he would get him to a race course was if he rode him out himself, because Aldaniti used to pull very hard. And Josh had hands like silk, I promise you. And he rode him really well and got him there. He always had him in front. And I'd still say if Josh hadn't ridden him out every day, there's no way he would have got there in a million years. And, the rest is history, really. February the 13th came round. Aldaniti went back to Ascot. And the old horse used to love Ascot, actually, because he won his first novice chase there as well, first novice hurdle. It was a lucky track to him. And I can always remember picking up the Racing Post that morning, 13th of February, saw it was 66-1 for the National and 16-1 for the Whitbread Trial that day. As you know, jockeys aren't allowed to bet, but mothers do. So she had a few quid on, and at the 66-1, and the owners and Josh had a few quid on as well. So absolutely bolted up. And as I went by the winning post, Ladbrokes made me 12-1 second favourite for the National. Wow. So that's how impressive he was.
Was during this time, when did you get your diagnosis? Was it when you were...
Well, not my diagnosis, really, in 79. And, you know, I was riding well. Those 2 seasons were my best seasons, actually. I was third in the jockeys list and, you know, riding some really nice horses. And I'd had falls like every jockey has them. And, you know, basically, I had this numb feeling, but did nothing about it. And I can remember going to Stratford, riding one for Nicky Henderson, actually, and a horse called Fury Boy. And I jumped the last fence, a fence clear, actually. And I don't know what the old horse did. You know, halfway up the run-in, it either tripped up, I don't know what he did, but he hit the ground. But I jumped up before the horse. He got up, kicked me where he shouldn't have kicked me, but still managed to jump on his back and go and win the race. Never thought any more about it. And I'm not saying that had anything to do with my cancer, but it made me aware. I went to America the next day because I used to spend my summers in the States for 3 reasons, really. 1, to get a bit of sunshine. 2, to keep my weight down. And 3, to earn a bit of a living, because there was no jump racing in England those days in the summer. So, you know, that's how that all started. And I was over there, and the weather wasn't the best in the world. And so I thought, well, I haven't had a holiday. I'll pop down to Mexico for about 6 days, and went down to Mexico. And every morning I chat to this English girl. She would have nothing to do with me in the evenings, but she talked to me in the mornings. And she said she was in America learning about a new chemotherapy. And she was a sister at the Royal Marsden Hospital. Didn't have a clue what she was on about, I promise you. And never thought any more about it. Went back to Delaware, had a couple of rides that weekend, managed to ride a winner. And I started going out with a vet, a lady vet, mind you. And having ridden the winners, managed to get her into bed that night. And the first thing she said to me was, if I was you, I'd get on the first plane back to England and see a specialist. That put me off my stroke, I promise you. And took her advice, landed at Heathrow, and rang a doctor up at the Park Street Clinic in London who used to patch all us jockeys up there, Alan Thomas, and told him what was wrong over the phone, not having a clue what was wrong, mind you. And he said, ring me back in 10 minutes and I'll have an appointment for you. I rang him back and he said, go to the Royal Marsden and see a doctor there. And so I kept thinking, I've heard of this Royal Marsden Hospital. I don't know what it is, but I've heard of it. When I walked in there, I saw what it was, a cancer hospital. Now I'm panicking, I promise you. Saw the doctor, 2 operations that week. They said, come back on the following Monday to have all the test results. And I'll still remember that day, you know, going in there. I think Steve McQueen had died of cancer that day, you know, so that wasn't a great advert for cancer for me.
Be terrified.
You know? And so, you know, walked in the hospital to get the results, and they sat me down and they said, Bob, you've got 2 choices. Without treatment, you may live 3 or 4 months, with treatment, we'll give you a 30% chance of living. And I thought, oh my God, you know, those days you hadn't heard of people really recovering. And, you know, I'm panicking, and then I just turned to him and said, well, I feel all right at the moment. I'll go back racing again, and with a bit of luck, I'll get killed on the race course. And I can remember the professor looking at me as if I was stupid and said, Bob, you know about novice chase jockey. If you're on a 6-4 shot, you'd give it a ride, wouldn't you? And that's how he taught me to having the treatment.
Yeah.
Then those days, the treatment was barbaric, I promise you. They pumped bleomycin, vinblasting and platinum into me every day for 7 days. Then I'd come out of the hospital on a drip all those days, come home for 2 days, have me back in on the 9th day, hit me again, then out for another 4 days at home again. And then the 21st day, they'd hit me again for the 7 days. They used to give you the few days off, really, so your body could stand it again, you know, because you were knocked to pieces. You know, it was horrendous. You were sick 24 hours a day. But I can remember after I'd been in the hospital a few days the first time, and I was panicking, I promise you, and I don't think I was the easiest patient because I was frightened. Yeah. And the staff nurse came to me and said, oh, the sister's coming around to see you. I thought, oh my God, he's a rollicking or something. Who was it? It was the person I met in Mexico. She was in America learning about the chemo I was having. That's how new it was. But what a small world.
Yeah.
You know, basically, the nurses and doctors were absolutely terrific in the hospital, I must admit. And I felt like giving up 2 or 3 times. I was giving up one day, and the nurses said, we'll leave the cannula in. You go and have a walk around the hospital and think about it, because I'd rung my sister up, come and collect me. I went out, and I ended up walking around a children's ward and saw them getting on with the treatment, not making a fuss.
Yeah.
And I thought, well, if they can do it, why can't I? And I was ashamed of myself, really. And from then, you know, managed to get through the treatment and left hospital, as I said, January the 1st, 1981.
So when you were in hospital, were you still planning on riding, or were you that poorly that you couldn't?
I kept saying I'm going to ride Aldaniti in the Grandnational. I thought I've got to have a goal.
Yeah.
And that was my goal. I think if I hadn't had a goal, I'd have given up. I promise you. I think you need a goal.
Yeah. So did they let you out then to go and ride out, or? And you know...
No, I couldn't ride out. I didn't have the strength to ride out. I promise you. You know, occasionally I did. The day Aldaniti broke down, I was there at Sandown. That broke my heart. I thought, there's my aim gone in life. But I thought, well, I've got to pull myself together, and I'm getting 3/4 way through the treatment. Think of another goal. And I kept thinking of all the other good horses, Kaibo, etc. And, you know, basically it went from there. And then I went back to America to get fit. The reason I went back to America was the weather was warmer. I could have got it fit in England, but it would take me 6 months longer, I'm sure. Beautiful weather, and I was riding about 10, 15 horses a morning and running, and I put on, you know, I went from 8 stone 7 on the treatment to 12 stone 7 in about 3 months. You know, it mucked up my metabolism and everything. And so, you know, I spent my time in the States. Kate used to come back for a day trip for my tests, then go back out there again. And I can remember, you know, May the 1st, I jumped on the scales, 80, and getting fit, and I was 12 stone 7. Had my first ride May the 31st, and I managed to do 10.7. So I managed to get rid of 1.5 stones in a month. But it was hard, but got fit and had my first ride back. It was in a flat race like our bumpers.
Yeah.
It went and won, but looking back on it, he should have won. I was on the best horse, and the thing that pleased me more than anything was I hadn't lost my racing brain. I was in the right place at the right time, and that meant an awful lot to me.
Yeah.
Then I stayed over for the Saratoga meeting all August, and rode a couple more winners, and then, I had to go back to England. I thought, I've always said, Josh always said my job was there when I came back, and he kept his word. My first ride back for him was a horse called Physicist, quite appropriate really, I suppose. But really, that was at Fontwell, and that won. And but it was a great day for Josh Gifford because it was his 500 training success. So that meant an awful lot to me as well. We did have a bit of a night out, and I did put a few pounds on. Then after that, the horses went wrong. They got the virus, and always the person that usually gets the blame is the jockey in the first place. And the owners didn't particularly want me. They didn't think I was as good as I was before. I'm not saying I was actually, but didn't really get the chance. And, it was about 2 or 3 months. I hardly had a ride for anybody. And I can always remember, I was thinking about retiring. I'd had enough. And Josh rang me and said, 2 of your horses run at Ascot in 2 big races. They'd both been off the track as long as myself, Henry Bishop and Kaibo. They were my rides before and everything. He said, you better come and ride them. And I remember going to Ascot. I was down in the dumps, I promise you. And I thought to myself, if things don't go right today, I'm giving up. What did those 2 horses go and do? They won the 2 big races of the day. I went from a down and out jockey to a good jockey again overnight, over an hour and a half actually. Had a fantastic run between Boxing Day, well, from beginning of December to February actually. Everything I seemed to sit on was winning. Had a great run. The horses came back to form, and then, as I said, Aldaniti came back on February the 13th. So I was flying really well then, and he was back after his long layoff as well, and it was 6 weeks to the National. Thankfully, we didn't run him in the Gold Cup because he was a horse that was always better fresh, and Josh trained him very, very professional. Well, he was a very professional trainer, and I can always remember we were lucky in a way because when 2 or 3 days before the National, there was a foot and mouth scare in Sussex, and Josh got a phone call from the police, who must have backed him already in the National, said you've got to get him out of the county by 5 o'clock in the morning because there's going to be a shutdown. So Josh got the travelling head lad and the lads up at 3 o'clock in the morning to get the horse ready, and they got him out of Sussex up to Liverpool 2 days early. The best thing that ever could have happened. So we're lucky in 2 ways, really. And, got up there and sat on him a couple of mornings, and he felt $1 million actually. And, got down to the start, and then it was a steering job.
So did Aldaniti have to have some sort of rehabilitation after him being in a cast? Did that not take quite a while to get him back into training?
Well, when he came out of his plaster cast, the Embreed crosses, Mr. and Valder and Nick, had him. They used to do all the road work with them, all their horses anyway. They had good staff, and Mrs. E used to ride him out. So he did an awful lot of road work before he went back to Josh. So he'd been a good half fit, actually, when he got back there. They were absolutely brilliant. They were brilliant feeders. Beryl, who was the head girl there, absolutely fantastic. And he went back there looking an absolute picture. And as I say, he was 50% fit as well.
So coming up to the National, were you still having treatment?
No, I'd finished treatment. I'd been off the treatment for 12 months, I suppose. No, not quite 12 months, but yeah, I was no treatment. It was, it was just hard work, keeping fit. I still go for my tests now. I have them regularly those days. I think it was began with monthly, then 6 weekly, then 2 months, and that. And I'm on yearly still. So, it's nice to keep an eye on me.
So leading up to the National then, did you have an idea that you probably would win it?
I was very confident I'd win. But mind you, I'd been confident a few other years too, and I fell at the first and things. But I honestly thought it was a formality. And it wasn't really, because I nearly fell at the first. He overjumped and he stood up even further at second. But the old horse realised the fences were bigger and solider. From that moment, he was a joy to ride. And I can always remember my orders were hold him up into the last fence, the way we always used to ride him. So everything's going great. I jumped beaches about 29th, and where I should have been. Must have had the best run round the canal turn than any jockey's ever had in the history of racing, because I jumped to the front at Valentine's, which is 3.5 miles from home. So I spent the next 3.5 miles thinking of the rollicking I'm getting in the stands from the governor. Better start thinking of excuses. So I jump a fence and think of another excuse. I remember I went through 5 Red Rum Nationals, how they were won, and everything like that. And I looked beside myself and I saw Sebastian had been 4th the year before, one side of me. On my other side, Rubstick had won a couple of years before. So that was 2 more excuses. And jumped the last in front and thought, well, I'm in the right place, the right time. Went and won the race. Did all the TV, press, radio interviews, which you have to do. And nearly forgot I had a ride in a race an hour later, and one Josh really fancied. I got beat on that. So I got me rollicking anyway. But Josh really wasn't rollicking me. He was just bringing me down to earth, actually. I really appreciate that.
So what was the feeling like when you had won the National?
Well, absolutely amazing. Believe it or not, the first thing I thought was that as I went by the post, I thought, hope this gives hope for people in hospital. And then the next feeling, I thought, what a way to retire. Then 1 second later, retire, I'd like to do this again. So maybe I should have retired, I don't know. But that was the first thing. But then walking back into the unsaddling enclosure, there was 2 other very special things. 2 of the nurses that looked after me in hospital, we got them tickets to be up there. They were the first 2 people that were there to wave me. But then there was the other man, Mr. Mackenzie, was my form master at school, and he talked me out of going down the mines and follow my dream. And I'll always remember them with his thumb up as I walked into the unsaddling enclosure. I'll never forget that.
Oh, and then you raced Aldaniti again on the Grandnational fences, didn't you? But didn't he fall at the first?
Yes, he fell at the first.
He retired after that.
Yeah, he was retired after that. He did virtually what he did the first year. He used to be very free and he overjumped. And this time he didn't catch himself and did a nice somersault. But then we retired him.
And then where did he go for his retirement? Did he go back to the farm?
He went back to the owners, and he did an awful lot for my cancer trust. I rode him from Holyrood Castle to Buckingham Palace and things like that. He was essential to how we raised all the money in the first place, definitely.
Yeah. So when did you then have the idea to write your book?
Well, it wasn't my idea. The run up to the National was... I started riding again and I got some letters from publishers and I kept throwing them away. What a stupid idea. And I was going racing with a good friend of mine, Jonathan Powell, who wrote the book. And I said one day, oh, I keep getting these stupid letters from these publishers about a book. What a stupid idea. And Jonathan never said anything for about an hour. And he said, it might be a bad idea, you know. So I said, well, if you want to write it and organize it, you get on with it. And that's how it came about, actually. And the book did nicely, I must admit, and gave a lot of people a lot of hope.
Yeah, no, I bet. And then, of course, you got your MBE, which you're now a CBE, but you got your MBE. And then was it the year after your MBE, you then started the Bob Champion Cancer Trust?
Yes, it was, actually. We started a couple of years after the National, yeah. And it wasn't me that set it up. It was people in this country. They sent their winnings of me winning the National to the Royal Marsden care of me. And Nick Embricos and Professor Peckham, the doctor, thought, you know, what can we do with this money? Because quite a lot was sent in. So we thought about a place for people to sit in when their families having the treatment and things. So we started that. Then we kept, a lot more money came. We had too much money for that. So we thought, well, we've got to be professional now. And that's how it all started. And so we got into the research, especially on the testicular side in the first place. And, you know, we kept raising money for that. Then we built our lab in the Royal Marsden, Sutton. And we fund, you know, we built that. We fund the scientists in there. And so we've kept on. Then we built the one in Norwich, which to me is the bee's knees. Absolutely fantastic facilities. You know, we've virtually cracked testicular, as long as it's caught early enough. Yeah. We've concentrated on prostate now, and we're doing very well in there. And the unit up at the Marsden, in Norwich, sorry, Professor Colin Cooper's taken over there. He's left the Marsden to head it up there, and he's doing very well up there, and we're coming up with the goods there. So, you know, we've been very successful, and things at the moment, you know, trying to raise money is very difficult for all charities, not just my charity. So, you know, it's hard work. So we've got to come up with some good ideas for the rest of the year, you know, when we can start getting out there again. And, you know, we just don't know at the moment. But it's 40 years since I won the Grandnational this year, so we've got to come up with some good ideas.
Oh, definitely, definitely. So did you say that Aldaniti used to help you, well, he used to bring him along to all charity events and stuff?
Yes, he did. He came to an awful lot, and the public loved him. I suppose there was Red Rum doing exactly the same in his time. And, you know, I remember going up a lift with him in a big, not supermarket, big store in Leeds. It was about 10 stories high, you know, in a lift. And I thought, I don't like this very much, but he was an absolute Christian.
Oh, I bet he loved it.
Yeah, he didn't mind it. I thought, what happens if things go wrong?
That's fantastic. So also recently you took part in the full Monty on Ice. I have to say it was brilliant, because after I watched it, the first thing I did was check myself. So, you know, the awareness is fantastic. So how did you find that experience?
Oh, it was a funny experience, but, you know, we all did it for the same reason, to get people to check themselves. Because if people check themselves, there's something wrong, you get diagnosed earlier and you've got a chance of recovery. The problem with this virus, a lot of people haven't been able to get their tests and everything. And, you know, I think, you know, we're going to have deaths from this virus, but I think we could have an awful lot more deaths with cancers and other diseases because they've missed their scans and everything. So that does worry me. But so that's the main reason we all got involved. Most of us had been involved with different illnesses, cancer, majority of us. And, you know, when I was asked to do it, they never told me it was on ice. And till I said yes. And I can't ice skate, as you know. I've never been on a pair of ice skates and never want to get on another pair in my life. I promise you, that ice stuff is very slippery.
Yes.
And it's, I promise you. Maybe you can ice skate, but I can't.
Well, my best friend, he's a professional ice skater. And I mean, I'm not an ice skater. And when I got on the ice, I just fell over. So I completely feel your pain.
Oh, thank you. That's good. You know, we were very lucky. We worked with some really top class professional ice skaters. They were out of this world, and they helped me a bit, and they made me look a little bit worse on the film. I could skate a little bit better than that, but not much. And but it's a TV program, and I could stand up and I could go a couple of 100 yards in a straight line on my own, you know.
That's fine.
But that was about it. But it was, you know, it was fun to do. It was hard work, especially the last 4 days up at Blackpool and on the ice rink. God, it's cold and on ice rinks, you know. And the last day we were on 18 hours, and then taking your clothes off on an ice rink, barefoot on ice, it gets through to you a little bit, I promise you.
I'm not surprised. So did that manage to raise quite a bit of money and awareness?
No, it wasn't for money at all. It was just awareness programs done, and I think it's done the job actually, because I got a text from a person who'd watched the program that night. The next day he texted me and said, I watched the program, I've got a bit of a pain, I'm going to see a doctor tomorrow. So
yeah,
you know, hopefully that person's all right. But at least he was doing something about it. Yeah. And that's the main reason for the program.
Yeah, no, exactly. Like I said, you know, after I watched it, the first thing I did was check, because it's something I think you end up forgetting about until you're reminded, and it's so important.
Well, it is. And, you know, I think women are a lot better at checking themselves than men. Let's be honest. You know, if I've got a cold, I'm dying. But if there's something seriously wrong with me, I'll do nothing about it. It may be frightened to. I don't know what it is, but I think most men are like that. And if it gets through to the men, you know, the women are more sensible about it. I must admit, you know, they have more tests and everything anyway. But you know, which is important. But you know, as we said before, just check your body.
Yeah, no, exactly. And what was the, you know, like in the 70s and 80s, what was the awareness like then? Was there anything similar? People raising awareness, or?
No, when I was in the 70s and 80s, cancer was a dirty word, you know, in a way, really. If people had cancer, all you thought about was death. And, you know, you didn't hear people recovering. Most likely they did, but people never talked about it. It was always hush-hush in the family. And I think, you know, thankfully it's more out in the open.
No, definitely. Bob, thank you so much. That is all my questions. But I actually do have one last one from my mum. She desperately wants to know where she can watch your film, because I tried searching. I've seen it with my mum, but we were trying to find it again, and I can't find it anywhere.
Well, we've got some DVDs at the BOB Champion Cancer Trust. Get in touch with them.
Oh, yes, please. That'd be brilliant.
Do that, you know, and...
Have you found lockdown? Have you been okay in lockdown?
Oh, I'm going mental, really. I like being busy, honestly. But I'm very fortunate because I live on the edge of the Gallops, so I can go walk around there to my heart's content. That's my garden, really. And so I'm not breaking any rules. But if I couldn't have done that, you know, I do feel sorry for people living in big cities, in big blocks of flats and everything. It would send me mental, I promise you. But there again, I'm a country boy.
I know exactly how you feel. Last year I was in a flat, and being, you know, in the countryside all the time, and then in lockdown I was in a flat, and I was like, what am I going to do? I don't know.
Yeah, that's it.
Whereas thankfully I'm out and I'm back in the countryside now, which is good. Do you still ride though?
Beg your pardon?
Do you still ride?
No, very rarely, only if I have to. I've done that. I've got the T-shirt, and I couldn't be good as I was when I was younger.
Do you go to any yards to help and advise?
I love watching the horses in the morning, and you know, let them get on with it as they want to, and you know, I just love seeing racehorses. Yeah.
Well, talking of racehorses, those behind you in the frames, it's a little bit blurry, so I can't see. Who are they?
Well, that one is Kaibo.
Oh, yeah.
winning the big hurdle race at Kempton.
Mm-hmm.
That was on Boxing Day. Then that's a horse called Last Town, Ladlark, sorry, upside Bob Davis, winning at Ascot. And that was my first winner back after my illness in America, Double
Wow.
Reef.
Oh, fantastic.
I'll always remember that day.
Yeah.
It meant so much to me.
I bet it did. And sorry, but that was after was that your first
Cancer,
ride back?
yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, that was the first ride back and winner.
Yeah. Well, that's all you needed. You just needed a winner.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, that's lovely. Well, Bob, I'll let you go. Thank you so much. Honestly, I really appreciate it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Cool. All right, then. Well, we'll speak
Okay.
soon and have a lovely day.
And you.
Bye.
Bye.
Come and fly
Bye.
away with me. Come and fly away with me. Come and fly away with me. Come and fly away with me.